I remember the first time my cousin Lily told us she was getting married. She sat in our grandmother's living room, her engagement ring glinting under the warm light, and her smile stretched from ear to ear. I'd never seen her so happy. She had been with Daniel for 3 years, and honestly, I thought they were the perfect couple. I mean, they had their arguments, but nothing out of the ordinary. Our entire family seemed thrilled at first. Aunt Margaret, Lily's mother, immediately started planning the ceremony. She wanted it big, extravagant, something the whole town would talk about for years. "It has to be perfect," she kept repeating, as if the word itself was a spell that could fix everything. My mom, on the other hand, believed a smaller wedding would be better, more intimate, but she didn't dare push her opinion too hard. Family dynamics were always complicated with us. At the start, I didn't think much of it. After all, every wedding brings some level of stress and bickering. But then I began to notice the tension. It wasn't just about the flowers or the venue. There were whispers during family dinners, quiet arguments behind closed doors, and glares exchanged across the table. It all started with the guest list. Aunt Margaret wanted to invite her estranged brother, my Uncle James, who hadn't spoken to the family in nearly 15 years. The mere mention of his name made my mother pale. "He's not welcome," she said firmly one night, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. "If he steps foot in that church, I won't be there." But Lily insisted. "He's my uncle too," she argued. "This is my wedding, and I want him there." I could feel the air freeze when she said that. Grandma tried to mediate, but even she couldn't stop the storm that was brewing. The thing is, nobody ever told me why Uncle James had been exiled from the family. I only knew bits and pieces, rumors about betrayal, money, maybe even something worse. Anytime I asked, the adults would clam up, change the subject, or scold me for being nosy. But now, with the wedding looming, the old wounds were being torn open. The closer the big day came, the more cracks started to show. Lily and Daniel argued about the venue costs. Margaret snapped at anyone who dared question her decisions, and my mom stopped answering her sister's phone calls altogether. I thought, at worst, it would just be a wedding full of awkward silences and fake smiles. But deep down, I felt something darker simmering beneath the surface. Something that could turn celebration into disaster. And I was right. As the wedding day drew closer, the tension in our family became unbearable. Rehearsal dinners are supposed to be lighthearted and fun, a chance for both families to bond before the big day. Ours felt more like a battlefield. Daniel's family was polite, almost too polite, the kind of people who smiled with tight lips while their eyes darted nervously at the chaos unfolding around them. At one point, Daniel's father even pulled me aside and whispered, "Is it always like this?" I wanted to laugh, but instead I muttered, "You have no idea." The elephant in the room was Uncle James. Aunt Margaret had secretly mailed him an invitation behind my mother's back, and when Mom found out, all hell broke loose. I'll never forget the moment she slammed the phone down after confronting her sister. She turned to me, her hands shaking, and said, "If James shows up, I swear I'll walk out. I mean it." That's when I realized this wasn't just a petty sibling rivalry. There was real pain behind her eyes, something I had never understood until then. The night before the wedding, I accidentally overheard a conversation between my mom and Grandma. They were in the kitchen, speaking in hushed voices, but I caught enough to piece things together. "He stole from us, Mother," my mom whispered harshly. "He ruined Dad's business. Do you remember how we nearly lost the house? And then he just disappeared, like a coward." Grandma sighed. "It was years ago. People change. Margaret wants peace." "Peace?" Mom cut her off, her voice trembling. "You don't know everything. If Lily knew what kind of man James really is, she wouldn't want him anywhere near her wedding." I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding. Stole? Ruined the family business? I had never heard that before. Suddenly, my mother's anger made sense, but it also raised more questions. What exactly had James done? And why did Aunt Margaret still want him there, after everything? The next morning, we got our answer. James showed up. He walked into the church during the rehearsal, wearing a crisp suit and carrying himself like he owned the place. Gasps echoed through the pews. Lily's face lit up with surprise and joy, but my mother's expression hardened into pure fury. "Get out," she said through clenched teeth. "You don't belong here." For a moment, I thought James would argue. Instead, he just smiled coldly and said, "I came for Lily, not for you." The atmosphere in that church shifted instantly. Guests exchanged uneasy looks. Daniel grabbed Lily's hand tightly, and my mom stormed out, slamming the doors behind her. And right then, I knew this wedding wasn't going to be about love anymore. It was going to be about survival. The morning of the wedding should have been filled with excitement. Hair appointments, makeup, laughter, champagne. Instead, the atmosphere was suffocating. My mom hadn't spoken a word since storming out of the rehearsal. She refused to even look at Aunt Margaret, and Grandma was trying desperately to keep the peace. Though her trembling hands gave away the truth, she was terrified things would fall apart. I arrived early at the venue, trying to help where I could. Lily was in the bridal suite, pacing back and forth in her white gown, looking like a princess trapped in a nightmare. Daniel sat in another room with his groomsmen, pale and restless, already sipping whiskey to calm his nerves. "Everything's fine," Lily kept saying to herself, as if repeating it enough times would make it true. "It's my day. It has to be fine." But the tension outside those doors told a different story. I found James standing near the entrance, chatting with a couple of distant relatives he hadn't seen in years. His confidence was unsettling, like he believed he had every right to be there, despite the whispers around him. When his eyes met mine, he gave me a smirk. That smirk sent chills down my spine. Then my mom arrived. She walked straight up to him, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. "You need to leave," she hissed. "Right now." James didn't flinch. "Still holding grudges, I see. You really should learn to let things go, and, You nearly destroyed us," she snapped. "Do you even understand what you did?" The room fell silent. Guests nearby pretended not to listen, but everyone was hanging on to every word. Lily suddenly appeared, tears threatening to spill. "Stop it, both of you," she cried. "This is my wedding day, and I won't let it turn into some stupid family feud." But it was too late. Daniel's father stepped in, clearly uncomfortable. "Perhaps this isn't the best place for whatever this is," he suggested carefully. James only chuckled, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Maybe the truth deserves to come out, finally." That was when my mom's face went pale. She grabbed his arm and muttered, "Don't you dare." The cryptic exchange sent a ripple of unease through me. What truth? What else hadn't I been told? I barely had time to process before the ceremony was set to begin. Guests shuffled into the church. Lily wiped her eyes and forced on a smile, and Daniel straightened his tie like he was preparing for battle instead of marriage. As the music started and Lily took her first steps down the aisle, everyone held their breath. For a fleeting moment, it seemed like the wedding might actually happen. But then James stood up, and everything unraveled. The music cut off when James rose from his seat. All eyes turned toward him. Lily froze mid-step, clutching her bouquet like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Daniel looked bewildered, his brows furrowing as if he was about to demand answers. James cleared his throat. "Before this marriage takes place," he announced, his voice echoing through the church, "there are things this family has hidden for far too long. Lies, betrayals, and I won't sit quietly while everyone pretends nothing happened." Gasps rippled through the pews. Aunt Margaret shot up from the front row, her face white as paper. "James, sit down," she barked, her voice shaking. But James ignored her. His eyes were locked on Lily. "You deserve to know, before you walk down that aisle, what kind of family you're marrying into, and what kind of blood runs through your veins." The words sent a chill racing down my spine. Lily's knees wobbled, and Daniel moved instinctively toward her, but she raised a trembling hand, signaling him to stop. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. My mom stood abruptly. "That's enough. If you say another word." James laughed bitterly. "Still trying to silence me, Anna? Just like you did 15 years ago? Maybe you're afraid she'll finally learn the truth." Everyone was frozen. Even the priest looked helpless, his hand hovering in the air like he wanted to restore order but had no idea how. James took a step forward, his voice growing louder. "Our dear father didn't lose his business because of bad investments. He didn't fail because of the economy. He lost everything because I exposed what was happening, because Anna," he turned and pointed at my mother, "was stealing money behind his back." The words struck like lightning. The church erupted in murmurs and gasps. My mom's face went crimson, her chest heaving as if she couldn't breathe. "That's a lie," she cried, her voice cracking. "You were the thief, James. You twisted everything to save yourself." Lily's bouquet slipped from her hands, scattering white roses across the aisle. She looked from my mom to James, her lips trembling. What is happening?" Daniel tried to steady her, but she shook him off. "No, I need to know. Who's telling the truth?" Grandma sobbed quietly in the front row, covering her face with her hands. Aunt Margaret shouted at James, "How dare you ruin her day like this?" But James only folded his arms, a satisfied smirk on his lips. She deserves to know the family she's marrying into. This wedding is built on lies. The silence that followed was unbearable. Lily's dream day had just turned into a nightmare, and deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The church felt like it was collapsing in on itself. Lily stood frozen at the center aisle, her veil trembling, as if even the air around her was unsettled. Daniel hovered nearby, torn between protecting her and staying out of the chaos. "Tell me the truth." Lily finally screamed, her voice echoing through the church like thunder. "Was it you, Mom? Or was it James? Who ruined Grandpa's business?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and the sound of it made my chest tighten. She wasn't just asking for facts. She was begging for clarity, for honesty, in a family that had built walls of silence and half-truths for years. My mom's eyes brimmed with tears. "Lily, listen to me. I worked day and night to keep this family together. James is lying, just like he always has. He betrayed us, and when we caught him, he ran." James sneered. "Convenient story. You always did know how to play the victim." At that point, Daniel stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Enough. This isn't the place. This isn't the time. Lily, we don't need this. We can leave." But Lily shook her head violently. "No. If I marry you today, Daniel, it has to be with the truth. I can't start my marriage living under these shadows." The silence that followed was suffocating. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some whispering, some shaking their heads. The priest looked ready to walk out himself. Then Grandma stood. She was trembling, but her voice was firm. "Enough. Both of you." She turned first to James, then to my mom. "This family has been broken for too long because of secrets. Maybe today is the day we stop pretending." The room went dead quiet. Grandma's hands shook as she gripped her cane. "James was right about one thing. There was theft. Money went missing. Your father lost the business because of it. But Anna..." She turned to my mother. "You weren't blameless either." The words cut through the air like knives. My mom staggered backward, her face crumpling. "Mother, no," she whispered. Lily's breathing quickened. "So you both lied? All these years? And you let me think our family was whole?" Tears streamed down her face as she looked around the church, at Daniel, at her parents, at the guests who had just witnessed the unraveling of her family. Then she whispered the words no one expected to hear. "I can't do this wedding. Not today." Gasps filled the room. Daniel's face went pale, his hands falling uselessly at his sides. Aunt Margaret clutched her chest, nearly collapsing into her chair. And just like that, the wedding that was supposed to unite everyone shattered before it even began. The church was silent, except for Lily's soft, shaky breaths. Daniel reached for her hand, but she pulled away, shaking her head. "I can't, Daniel. Not like this. I need a moment, a real moment, to understand my family before I make a lifetime commitment." Guests began to murmur, unsure whether to leave or stay. Aunt Margaret sat frozen, her hands gripping the pew like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. My mom slumped into a chair, her face buried in her hands. James stood proudly, almost smug, watching the chaos he had helped stir. I stepped forward. I don't even know why. Maybe it was instinct. "Everyone needs to calm down," I said quietly but firmly. "Lily, it's your day. If you want to step outside, take a breath. We'll follow your lead." She nodded, tears spilling freely. We all walked outside into the crisp air. For a moment, the world felt normal again, or at least as normal as it could be with family secrets hanging in the balance. Lily turned to Daniel. "I love you, and I want to marry you, but I can't let the past ruin our future. We need to pause to figure things out." Daniel looked relieved and devastated at the same time. "Whatever you need, I'm with you," he said, squeezing her hand. Then something unexpected happened. My mom approached James, her expression a mix of anger and weariness. "I don't know if we'll ever forgive each other fully," she said, voice trembling. "But this ends today. You're leaving, and we're going to try to heal for Lily's sake, if nothing else." James smirked briefly, then nodded. "Fine, but don't think I'll disappear completely. This family has stories that will follow us forever." Aunt Margaret, still shaky, finally spoke. Maybe we can start over, just a little." Lily looked around at all of us. Her parents, her grandmother, Daniel, even James standing awkwardly at the edge of the lawn. "Let's do it my way," she said softly. "A smaller ceremony. Just us. The people who actually love each other. We can celebrate later when the air isn't so toxic." And so, with trembling hands and hearts still raw, we reassembled. The wedding went on, much smaller than planned, but somehow more beautiful. No grand gestures, No extravagant decorations, just love, honesty, and the messy, imperfect family that had survived its own secrets. As Lily and Daniel exchanged vows under the open sky, I realized something important. Families are messy, chaotic, and often broken. But even in the midst of turmoil, love finds a way to endure. And sometimes, the wedding that almost didn't happen is the one that matters the most because it survived the storm.